Good morning, everybody. I invite you to enter our sanctuary and enter this space of active listening. Not just hearing, but listening, active listening. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out. So this song, I realized, has verses. Sarah Dan Jones wrote this specifically in response to September 11th, 2001. So we're going to present the verses for you. One long day of terror is etched upon my heart. When I reflect on the shock that I felt as I cried and watched the world fall apart, making sense of evil is no small task. Some may say, let's bomb the hell out of them. But before we do, we should look at our own past. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. At times I feel bewildered, like I'm lost in a dream. Fears are heavy, I search for hope and the meaning of truth as I close my eyes and I focus on peace. Fear's a heavy feeling, it can eat you alive, but it can't run, no, and it can't hide. If you breathe these words, you know you'll survive. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I'm feeling hopeless and I'm out of control, I clear my mind, yes, and I think on a cure. And I center in as I make love my goal. And is war really an answer? Can we find those to blame? All we are singing is give peace a chance. And I pray to God as I sing this refrain. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. I breathe out love. I breathe out love.
Thank you. Good morning. Oh, come on, we could do better than that. Good morning. Morning. Welcome to the Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, and my pronouns are she and her. We are so glad that you're here, whether you're joining us virtually or if you're here in one of our on-campus spaces. Though you do not have to believe a creed to be comfortable among us, we welcome you in the spirit of those beliefs that we cherish that have been passed down to us. And you can learn more about them on our website, where you can also, if you're visiting with us virtually, complete a visitor's card. If you're here on campus, we hope you'll come and talk to our welcome table after the service. I want to ask you to consider that starting next month, you can join Reverend Rodney to explore the sociological and anthropological work of Isabella Wilkerson and her premise that America has a caste system in place. That discussion was supposed to start today, but it's going to be delayed until next month. So please mark your calendar for the second Saturdays of the month. We will have also, please take some time after service to stay and say hello to people. People have been sharing with me that they're not staying because they're afraid they won't recognize people who are wearing masks and it will be embarrassing. But we're all in the same boat. So that's why we're trying really hard to wear name tags, which will help, and also just to take the time to connect with one another after the service. At 11:45, we will also have a brief time for people who want to meet each other in conversation and discuss a question based on the service on campus, and we will also have our virtual connection hour as well. So please do join us in the many ways that you can. To find out all that's happening here, please go to mduuc.org, where our virtual calendar is right at the top of the newly redesigned website. Please contact me or our intern minister, Michael, if you are in need of a listening ear, because asking is a gift you give our community, and welcome. We are so glad you are here today.
Good morning. I'm Nasa Matt, a member of your Board of Trustees, and I use she, her pronouns. Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church is a welcoming faith community. we begin our services by reading our mission together. We bring to life our Unitarian, Universalist values as we seek truth and work for justice, nurture compassion and courage, reach out to each other and to our larger community of faith, bridge the divisions that wound the human family, transform ourselves and our world. We are so glad that you are joining us in whichever of the 4 ways you have chosen. Connecting to one another is vital. Please stay connected, whether virtually or in person, as you need. Our calendar has many opportunities which are also described in the weekly church email and on our mduuc.org website. We are a living and learning community, and as we go through this time of experimentation, we invite you to reach out to your board and let us hear from you. And please join us for connection after the service, here on campus or virtually. And welcome, it's good to be together.
Hello, everybody. We're Steve and Nancy Falk, and we miss all of you.
And we're sending you our very best.
And we'll be reverting to the classic Children's Chapel chalice lighting today, which goes like this. We light this chalice to remind ourselves to treat all people kindly, because they are our brothers and sisters, to take good care of the earth because it is our home, to live lives full of goodness and love, because that is how we will all become the best people we can be.
My name is Marina, and I'm the Assistant Director of Religious Education, and today we have a story for you called A Weekend with Wendell. Okay, take 2. The story is called A Weekend with Wendell. On Friday afternoon, Wendell's parents dropped him off at Sophie's house. "Wendell's going to spend the weekend with us," said Sophie's mother, while his parents visit his relatives out of town. "Oh, boy," said Wendell. Sophie didn't say anything. Was right. Do you think Sophie's excited about this hangout? I don't. After a snack, Sophie helped Wendell carry his sleeping bag and suitcase upstairs. "Well, what are we going to do now?" asked Wendell. "Do you have any toys?" Sophie pointed to her toy chest. "Is that all you've got?" said Wendell. "I've got 1,000,000 times more than that. What else is there to do around here?" "We could play in the house," said Sophie. "Only if I make all of the rules," said Wendell. Is that nice? No. So they played house, and Wendell made the rules. He was the father, the mother, and the 5 children. Sophie was the dog. Then they played hospital. Wendell was the doctor, the nurse, and the patient. Sophie was the desk clerk. When they pretended they worked in a bakery, Wendell was the baker, and Sophie was a sweet roll. "Isn't this fun?" said Wendell. Sophie didn't say anything. At dinner, Wendell said that he was allergic to anything green, so he didn't have to eat his vegetables. Who here is allergic to green vegetables? That's what I thought. And then, when Sophie wasn't looking, he scooped the whipped cream off of her dessert. "When is Wendell leaving?" whispered Sophie. "Soon," said her mother. "Soon," said her father. After Sophie's parents tucked Sophie in her bed, zipped Wendell in his sleeping bag, kissed them both, and turned off the light, Wendell grabbed his flashlight and shone it right in Sophie's eyes. "See you tomorrow," he said, smiling. Sophie shut her eyes. "I can't wait for Wendell to go home," she said to herself. On Saturday morning, when Sophie woke up, there was a lumpy blue monster jumping up and down on her bed. It was Wendell. She felt something pinch her leg at breakfast. It was Wendell. She heard scary noises coming from the broom closet. It was Wendell. Wendell used Sophie's crayons and left them on the porch so they melted. At lunch, Wendell finger painted with his peanut butter and jelly. "Isn't this fun?" said Wendell. Sophie didn't say anything. "When is Wendell leaving?" whispered Sophie. "Soon," said her mother. "Soon," said her father. At bedtime, Sophie put her head on her pillow. She heard something crunch. It was a note from Wendell. It said, "See you tomorrow." Sophie shut her eyes. "I can't wait for Wendell to go home," she said to herself. Before Wendell's parents picked him up on Sunday, he tried to make a long-distance call. He wrote his name on the bathroom mirror with toothpaste. He gave Sophie a new hairdo, but he did it with shaving cream. "Want to go outside and help me wash this off?" asked Sophie. "We could play firefighter." "Oh boy," said Wendell. So they played firefighter, and Sophie made the rules. She was the fire chief. Wendell was the burning building. "Isn't this fun?" said Sophie. Wendell didn't say anything. "Do I get to be the fire chief?" asked Wendell. "Maybe," said Sophie. Soon, Wendell and Sophie didn't care who was the fire chief and who was the burning building. "Time to go," said Sophie's mother. "Time to go," said Sophie's father. "Already?" said Wendell. "Already?" said Sophie. "When is Wendell coming back?" asked Sophie. "Never," said her mother. "Never," said her father. That afternoon, when Wendell unpacked his suitcase, he heard something crunch. It was a note from Sophie. It said, "I hope to see you soon." The end. And now I'd like to invite the kids to come with me. We're going to head in that direction, and they're going to be sung out to your classes.
Beloveds. It's good, not bad, not bad. The intern minister, I'm Michael Macias. My pronouns are they and them. Today's service offers us an opportunity to reflect on how we engage with the world around us. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called into covenant and affirm the principles and living traditions that hold us in relationship with each other and the larger community. In this, we encourage each person to freely search for what is true and right in life. How then do we navigate the tensions that arise when the conclusion of one person's search for what is right and true is distinct from the resolution of our own? How do we create a bridge between us when the demand for truthfulness and the doubt that there is any truth to be found exists simultaneously? In these times, we've witnessed an absence of civil discourse. As we are confronted by the polarization of our communities, we are called to embrace the very best of who we are and what our faith tradition is about. It is not my truth versus your truth, or my faith tradition versus your faith tradition. It is about a collective movement towards our shared responsibility to one another. As Unitarian Universalism debated the very principles and living traditions that we hold as sacred, we lift up Francis David, who said, "We need not think alike to love alike." That is as true today as it was then. Indeed, we uplift a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and remind ourselves that this free and responsible search happens in community and with respect for the interdependent web of existence. Today, we invite you to explore the principles, values, and practices of your faith tradition or traditions when confronted by these rising tensions, with hope that we can move from trying to win a debate to understanding and that shared movement towards responsibility. May we be guided by rational thought and move forward in love. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the selfishness that set us apart and alone.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For losing sight of our unity.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusions of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
This is the time in our service when we take into the larger heart of this community those joys and sorrows that are too great to bear alone. I am asking Michael this morning to light a candle for Sharon Sabato. Sharon is asking that we light a candle for Ashley Diaz, the crossing guard who gave his life to save a child in Lafayette this week. I'm also asking Michael to light a candle for Ron Annan, who writes, "My nephew, Mario Annan, had a very successful brain surgery on Thursday. The doctor said things could not have gone better, and Mario was in good spirits and responding well afterward. Thank you all for your thoughts, prayers, and well wishes." I am lighting a candle for Hope Johnson, my colleague, the Reverend Dr. Hope Johnson, whose celebration of life was last Saturday. She was a first responder as a chaplain and sustained damage to her lungs as part of her service. So she grappled with her health issues for almost 20 years afterward. We are lighting a candle, wishing for improved health for Errol Reyes, who has suffered a setback and has been in the hospital. He returned home last night, and we're thinking of him and Reverend Rodney today. Terry Westrope is lighting a candle of joy for his son Seth, who has been accepted into a program in Southern California. And we are lighting a candle of joy and celebration that Mary Lou Correa is the featured artist in September with her exhibit September Colors of Joy at the Benicia Air Gallery. And that will be going through most of this month. So it's a retrospective of her work, and we celebrate her achievement during this pandemic. I ask Michael to light 2 final candles. One holds those joys and sorrows that are not expressed in words, but which we also take into the loving heart of this community. And the other holds our hopes and dreams for this one imperfect but beloved world of which we are a part.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
I invite you to join me in the spirit of meditation, in the deep ask of prayer. On this week in which we remember the great divisions in our world. In this week in which we are grateful for those precious gifts from our religious ancestors, including the great gifts of this week of awe from our Jewish ancestors. As the holiday of Yom Kippur is observed around the world, we also hold our wish that it will be in the spirit of love. We wish for awareness of ourselves, within ourselves and around the world, in the hearts of the people of the world, of those questions that we know in these difficult times. Because when we are together, in whatever way we are, we can hold that which is too large for us to hold alone. So together let us ask these questions in our heart. What is the shape of our fear? What is the shape of my joy? What is the shape of your anger? What is the shape of our strength? What is the shape of my sorrow? And what is the shape of peace for you? In the spirit of this week, let us ask ourselves that timeless question, which is asked in all religious traditions. Where do I need to offer forgiveness to myself? Where do I need to offer forgiveness to others? May we never lose our commitment to asking the largest questions of our world. May we keep our commitment to this and other communities which allow us to ask them together. May we be the ones to make it so.
Finally, I'm crossing the threshold from the ordinary world to the reveal of my heart. Undoubtedly, that will for certain take the dead out of the sea and the darkness from the earth. This is my commitment, my modern manifesto. I'm doing it for all of us who never got the chance, longing for all my birds of paradise who never got to fly at night 'cause they were caught up in the dance. Oh, sometimes it feels like I've got a war in my mind. I wanna get off, but I keep riding the ride. I never really noticed that I had to decide to play someone's game or live my own life, and now I do. I wanna move out of the black into the blue. Finally, gone is the burden of the cowardly way of being that comes from energies combined. Like my part was I was not discerning, and you, as we found out, were not in your right mind. There's no more chasing rainbows and hoping for an end to them. There are ashes are illusions, solid at first glance. But then you try to touch them, there's nothing to hold on to. The colors used to lure you in and put you in a trance. Oh, sometimes it feels like I've got a war in my mind. I wanna get off, but I keep riding the ride. I never really noticed that I had to decide to play someone's game or live my own life, and now I do. I wanna move out of the black into the blue, out of the black into the blue. Out of the black into the blue.
Good morning. Morning. I'm Chris Carter. I am a member of your Board of Trustees, the congregation's elected treasurer, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. For today's call for offering, I'd like to invite you to join me in considering the offering not as a fiscal transaction, but rather as an opportunity to share in the joy of generosity. Our gifts to MDUUC help bring the values and commitments that we share and that this community represents to life. It is a deep joy to experience ourselves as a giving community and part of something greater than ourselves. This morning, I invite you to share in that joy. You may do so here at MDUUC if you are attending in person. No matter how you are attending, you may give through our website, mduuc.org, where you can click at the yellow Give Now button at the top of the page. The ushers will now come forth to receive the offering. dedicating our offering to the work of this community in transforming ourselves and our world. We dedicate ourselves and our offerings. Thank you.
In our midst. I know I don't need to name it, as we're all living through it right now. There are factions of people who deny the existence of science and forgo the opportunity to apply logic and reason, claiming instead individual freedom. Their resistance to mask and vaccinate themselves often results in their unfortunate hospitalization and death, and is providing an incubator to a mutating virus. A process that, left to continue, may render our current vaccines useless. This storm of wills, from my perspective, is a failure of some of our societal members to understand the importance of balancing individual rights to other promises that we make to one another. In our society, sometimes these commitments are made in legally binding contracts, and in other cases, like religious communities like our own, our commitments are codified through covenants. Our individual rights can have a complicated relationship to our covenantal commitments. I follow a number of cyber activists on the social media platform TikTok. These activists monitor healthcare providers, largely nurses, who are actively promoting disinformation and refusing to vaccinate, even though they have daily patient contact. The activists seek to hold these professionals accountable to their own professional creeds and covenants. Truth be told, the activists themselves are healthcare providers, nurses, doctors, and pharmacists. I appreciate their efforts on a very personal level. As many of you know, my husband continues to heal from a life-altering brain hemorrhage. We went to the ER 3 days ago, and it took 5.5 hours to be evaluated by a physician. Even in our county, in our state, the hospitals were still overrun with COVID-19 patients experiencing respiratory distress due to the holiday weekend and the poor air quality. I was not allowed to wait with him in the waiting area and hadn't seen him until late last night when he was discharged. As if this wasn't stressful enough, other families in hospitals in other states would have had the added stress of worrying if the nurse treating their loved one was vaccinated or not. As an epidemiologist, this is maddening. However, as a human, I get the right to not accept vaccines and to exercise body autonomy. I believe that it is true that if I am a provider in these communities, I have the right to refuse a vaccine. And it is equally true that the exercising of that right must be contextualized among the responsibilities that I have to that community and my professional organizations or licensing boards. Hospitals and the workers therein have the responsibility to their community to not further endanger their patients. And we scientifically know now that these COVID vaccines are overwhelmingly capable of preventing hospitalization and death. We simply are not free from the consequences of holding our individual rights above our responsibilities to the community. Simply put, we must accept accountability from the communities that we are members of when exercising rights that are at odds with the agreements that we've made. We have to understand that violating covenantal commitments isn't without consequences. This insistence of individual rights while refusing to balance them against the community responsibilities is something that we as a covenantal faith experience ourselves. For a very long time, our faith movement has attempted to stress the importance of the we above the me. One of our recent religious ancestors, the Reverend James Luther Adams, insisted that religious convictions were more than sets of individual beliefs, but were rather also blueprints for how collectives of individuals could engage themselves into action. I see this as the building of the we through the me. Even to this day, we have a number of people in our association that feel our work on trans and racial allyship is, in their words, political correctness run amok. However, I simply see our faith movement's activity in combating the various forms of oppression to be a recognition that harming one another with our words, actions, or inactions is just simply unacceptable. Even if it means I must diminish one of my individual rights. The we becomes more important than the me. To make it make sense further, I need to return to my Christian upbringing and a song that we often sang at religious retreats. It's a song whose lyrics echo the teachings of James Luther Adams and his insistence that institutional behavior and social programming born out of our congregations are in fact indicative of the religious convictions of the individuals within our community. The song goes like this. We will work with each other, we will work side by side. We will work with each other, we will work side by side. And we'll guard each one's dignity and save each one's pride. And they'll know we are used by our love. By our love, yes, they'll know we are used by our love.
It is so good to see Reverend Rodney back in our worship services, and it is so good to see all of you here. We are so grateful to all of you who are joining us virtually. Those on the patio, can we give a big shout out to the patio and the Borton Hall? We're really grateful. So it is so wonderful to be gathered together. Thank you to everyone who has made that possible. With a sinking heart, I noticed a sign on my neighbor's lawn a couple weeks ago. Moms for Liberty. A few months ago, in the first weeks of my beloved grandchild's life, I had actually stopped at that yard and talked to those neighbors because they were giving away a swing, and I picked it up and took it to my child after cleaning it. The dad was pleasant and generous, and yet I wasn't surprised in this 2021 to read on the website that this group, which has chapters all over the nation, but only 3 in California, one of which is in our county, included a statement that masking is a form of child abuse. These moms pray now for liberty, they say daily, and I now pray for the safety of a toddler I have never met. A toddler whose parents love their child just as my daughter and son-in-law love theirs, and yet, here we are. The special cocktail of 2021 seems to be a fairly lethal concoction of rights and rage and reckless recasting of the truth. I doubt many listening need examples. However, because together we can hold what's hard for us to hold alone, I'm going to give you a few of them. The right to bear arms, even in the hallowed halls of our nation's capital, set the tone for this year. The right to refuse to get vaccinated, which has led to our nation, the nation with perhaps the greatest access to vaccines, to be now one of the deep red global spaces in our world. And a quiet story many may have missed this week as we rightfully marked the death of 3,000 people on September 11th in 2001, is the way that the larger pharmaceutical companies this week, who fueled an opioid epidemic that claimed 90,000 lives last year alone in 2020, are now exercising their rights to bankruptcy which will protect their corporate interests and also the personal fortunes of families such as the Sacklers. This is the world in which we live, and I could list more. Yet this headline, I think, from a Texas paper may sum it up, the madness of these last weeks. After crushing women's rights to choose, Governor Greg Abbott says Texans have the right to choose not to get vaxxed. That's pretty much it, right? Yeah. This is my public service announcement, by the way. This could actually happen in a state near you. If you haven't found the time yet, please drop your ballot in a ballot box sometime in the next couple days, right? Yes. I love having the drums back. When I searched for a definition of liberty on the internet a few weeks ago in preparation for this service, the top offerings that came up in my browser all spoke of the extreme ends of that right. In other words, liberty was the ability to be free to do anything that you wanted. That was how it was defined. It was individual, clearly, not collective, not the goal of the idealistic welcome of the Statue of Liberty offering sanctuary for the huddled masses. I believe, and I think we believe from our tradition, that true liberty is that which is found when we create a society and a world where the basic rights of people are honored and protected and made possible. The 1948 United Nations Declaration of Human Rights is worth reading, I learned. Though it's not, I will say, a shining example of any gender-inclusive language. It still struggles even with the binary, but it still sets forward some very basic rights that we are still working for in this nation and around the globe, as the news from recent weeks in Afghanistan reminds us. In this slow mudslide of maddening poppycock all around us, the idea of rights has become simply tied to our individual preferences. Rights which in a democratic process should be granted to individuals through our collective discernment and governance processes, which are also tied to larger ideas of responsibility, which are shared. We have long struggled with the idea of whose rights really matter. And on this weekend, when we do remember the horrific events of September 11th in 2001, and we also need to remember the many, many lives, including those of our Muslim neighbors, which remain affected by those events. The dangers of anger and the false sense of rights, which is always before us now. Whenever someone waxes nostalgic about how we all came together in the aftermath of 9/11, I remember being on the mandatory search list for 6 months, and particularly the time that, because my name had too many vowels, I was forced to set down my screaming, terrified 2-year-old so that men with semi-automatic weapons slipping down their shoulders could pat me down in our little podunk Charlottesville airport. In an era when we are wearied by sheltering in place, by sweating under masks, by getting our masks tangled in our microphones, and by having to do an ethical inventory for every act we do, it seems, like, do I give my neighbor a ride to the doctor? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Do I hug my friend? It becomes a moral crucible. We can see the devastating ironies here, because sometimes it does feel like we're in a war against our own mind. The people who are exercising their rights not to mask or not to get vaccinated are creating the conditions that prolong our needs to do that. That's the irony. And so you might ask, why is this a faith question? What does this all have to do with us as people in this faith? Author and founder of the Insight Meditation Society, Sharon Salzberg, reminds us that anger is not by its nature the problem. Because we believe it, we sometimes suppress it. We believe that it could be, that it's wrong. We suppress it till it comes out in its most volcanic and incendiary forms. She says, In Buddhism, we say anger is when we reach for, when we feel weak because we think it will make us strong. It functions to overcome a sense of helplessness, which for many of us is an almost unbearable feeling. She says that through anger, we gain a sense of agency, power, pride, and righteousness. Those are temporary gifts, but in the long term, what it does is keep us from our shared connections and responsibilities. Most people discover that when hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with their own pain. Sitting together in shared pain is part of what we can do together, as is re-strengthening our commitments to use our anger towards change. We can also stop being the people, we can be the people who root out the false news and who understand that personal preference is not the same as a right, that to live together in equality means we prioritize our collective health, safety, and well-being. We too can be susceptible to the ingredients in this lethal cocktail, and it's lethal, not just to our personal health, but to our nation and our world. Together, I do believe that we can face what we can't hold alone. We could be at the place where we acknowledge our fears to one another, where we learn to express our sadness and our anger. We can be the place where we remind ourselves of our common responsibilities and commitments. In this week of Yom Kippur, this time of atonement, which has been so nourishing to so many of us, can we not think about atoning by unmiring ourselves from the comfortable mud of resentment? Our resenting those whose resentment threatens our democracy may only hasten its demise. Sharon Salzberg reminds us that resentment does nothing to the person we resent. Rather, it saps our energy we could better put into a lot of things. Community building, appreciating joy, connecting to others, and learning how to live in this world that is clearly much more complicated than it used to be. Breathe in and breathe out. We need to give up some things to reemerge into this pandemic reshaped world. We need to give up the sense of powerlessness we feel and to reclaim our proper sense of power. We need to let go of some of our resentment and maybe stop worshiping a little bit at the altars of Amazon and Netflix and reconnect to real people as we can. We need to recognize the righteous anger we each feel and redirect it to a truer sense of protecting essential rights so that all can thrive. This year, perhaps more than others, wearied by loss and battered by change, it may be very hard just to breathe in and breathe out, to honor that hymn that Sarah Dan Jones, my colleague, wrote 20 years ago, to hold the ancient wisdom of our spiritual inheritance. But may we covenant together in this space to be the keepers of a larger moral imagination that says that if we forgive ourselves and each other, we can begin again in love.
Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Sit up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Hey man, don't you tell me heaven is under the earth. I know you don't know what life is really worth. It's not all that life that glitters is gold. Half the story has never been told. So now you see the light Hey, stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Get up, stand up.
Get up, stand up.
Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Stand up, give up the fight. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight.
And we extinguish our chalice with the words of Buddhist teacher Lama Rod Owen. If you weren't here last week, after we extinguish, we're all going to have a good time going out that way. Anger is always the bodyguard of our woundedness. There is the trauma, the anger, the rage. Healing is about moving through that, not distancing, not distracting, but moving through it to that really fundamental sadness and hurt that is beneath the anger. And so we extinguish our chalice, and we take forward the light of truth and the warmth of community into this hurting world.